And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition here of the Metal Steel Podcast. Where, of course, Charles Prodigy Richey here, as we are now 3 days away from the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Cincinnati Bengals at Acrisure Stadium. Remember when the season was rolled out this past spring? The Steelers were initially supposed to host a Sunday night game versus Bengals, but as announced a couple weeks ago on or actually a little over a week ago, excuse me, on the 8th, on Tuesday, November 8th, the Steelers Bengals game has been flexed to a late Sunday afternoon game, which will be on CBS, 4:25 p.m. Eastern kickoff will be the start time. And right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right now, for the most part, they are 3-6 at this point in time. Miraculously, somehow, they still seem to find themselves somewhat in the hunt for a playoff spot. If they can able to get a win here, go of 4-6 versus the Bengals right here, which would be really impressive. As we take a look at the AFC standings, just to recap right now, as we look at where we're at, the division winners right now are the Chiefs, Dolphins. I mean, the division leaders, excuse me, are the Chiefs, Dolphins, Titans, Ravens. Then you got your wild card teams, the Jets, Bills, and Patriots. Patriots holding the final seed for the moment, as Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-6. Basically, when you look in the standings, it's 2 games out, but it's realistically 3 games because the Patriots owning the head-to-head tiebreaker, which eliminates all other tiebreakers right now if they were to come down to it. So they basically need that in their favor if we're to come down to it. But if the season were to end today, you'd be having the Miami Dolphins hosting the New England Patriots, the Tennessee Titans hosting the Buffalo Bills. You would have the Ravens hosting the New York Jets for your wild card matchups with the Kansas City Chiefs in the bye. Remember, this is the second straight year where only the top seeds in the conference get the first round bye going into this. And here we are right now. It is a very interesting telltale of the tape for right now. Actually, no, let me take that back. I believe it's the third consecutive year that began, I want to say, in 2020 season when they expanded it to 7 seeds. If I'm not mistaken, let me just double check that math real quick. But yeah, definitely interesting scenario for the most part right now, as we got a lot of stuff to get to business here. For right now, but yeah, the only part that's really killing the Steelers right now is their conference record. They're 1-5 right now. So if the Steelers are able to manage to beat the Cincinnati Bengals this Sunday at Acrisure Stadium, they got some very winnable games, very reasonable, where they could be in them, and probably not. I mean, slight underdogs are probably favored. Wouldn't be surprised. You're going to be facing back-to-back road games in Indianapolis and the Falcons right there. There'll be a Monday night game if the league does not decide to flex that one at Lucas Oil Stadium on ESPN, where the Steelers will be hosting the Indianapolis Colts. And I wonder how much Colts fans will be fired up take on the Steelers in that game. And more so, the only reason why I would say more so fired up, because remember the looming controversy that has been speaking by multiple people who had problem with the Jeff Saturday hiring as Colts interim coach. Still uncertainty right there if Jeff Saturday is going to see how he feels with his future as far as being a coach in the long run. Can they make the success? Can they even turn into a playoff run? Being a lot of unfavorable odds. Not very well popular. It's coming in with some mixed reviews. There are some people who are in favor, like a Pat McAfee, Chris Mad Dog Russo, both of which who ripped into Bill Cowher, more notably uh, Christopher Russo right there, who hosts Mad Dog Sports on Sirius XM. He was very highly critical. He was also a fill-in guest on First Take every Wednesdays. You could also see him very irritated by the comments of course, Bill Cowher, and then, of course, Joe Thomas for Cleveland Browns offensive lineman right there. Then, of course, after the Colts game, you're going to be at the Falcons right there. So they could win these next three games. Like I said, you could possibly get back to 6-6 right there. Then you'd be having a home game versus Baltimore Ravens. More than likely, Lamar Jackson, if he's healthy. This is going to be a very interesting tale right there because honestly, I could definitely do see the Steelers making a bit of a run right now, and it probably won't hurt them even if they lost a game right here. There's a lot of people who are speculating too. I was also listening to Cook and Joel right here on 937 The Fan, who was saying that this is more important for the Bengals to, I mean, win this game for the most part, as they got a lot on the line, as they have not been looking impressive as of late for right now going into this. And I don't say I can really blame them because here's the fact of the matter with the Cincinnati Bengals this year. They have yet to win a game in the division. They're 0-3. Of course, 0-3. They lost two out of those three games on the road in Baltimore and in Cleveland. And then both primetime games, by the way, Sunday night versus the Ravens, and of course, Monday night versus the Browns on Halloween. And then the opener versus Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers got a chance to sweep the Bengals for the first time in 3 years back in 2019. And more nobly, too, they did that without Ben Roethlisberger, who injured his throwing elbow that year. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a long winning streak against Cincinnati Bengals for quite some time at that point. For the most part, they had a 10-game winning streak, basically, from 2015, beginning with on the road in Cincinnati late in that season, 2015, right there. So you look at like all that stuff right there too. And then plus, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers in a way too, they have struggled on the road this season. They're a game under 500. The Bengals are. They're 2-3, 3-1 at home. So this might be a chance right now for them to get some home cooking. No, excuse me. Let me take that back. They're on the road in Pittsburgh. So I mean, this is still right now a bad bind, and they have not been doing well on as far as like on primetime games when it looks at it. But still, they definitely got a lot of questions right now as we look at it. But right now, we'll see what happens. There's just a lot of interesting things right now too. As one of the key weapons for the Cincinnati Bengals, who dominated them last year alongside with Joe Burrow. You got Jamar Chase right there, who remains sidelined right now with a hip injury. Expect to be multiple games. But I mean, look at this team right here. And last year, I mean, they brought a lot of respectability, not just to the franchise, but to this rivalry in general, where they actually swept the Pittsburgh Steelers, which hasn't been done in forever. And you really think about all these stuff right here. I mean, the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers, and for the most part, has been swept. I mean, by the Bengals prior to that point in time. I think you'd have to go as far back. I want to say 1998 was probably like the last time that it's happened. But even still, I mean, it has definitely been an interesting road to say the least for this season right now. I mean, you'd probably be thinking, oh, actually, no, excuse me, 2009 was the last time. I take that back. Was the last time the Cincinnati Bengals swept the Steelers. They beat them in the first game in Cincinnati which was the third game of the season where the Steelers went to 1-2. They finished out the season 9-7, missing out on the playoffs as defending Super Bowl champions. And then they beat them in Pittsburgh later on that year. I want to say that was on November 15th. Yes, it was. They won that score 18-12 in that contest. And there you have it. And you look at, like I said too. I mean, you look at like the Bengals, like last year. I mean, what they've been able to do. Them. I mean, you look at like Mar Chase. I mean, like in like each of these two contests right there, he had 10 receptions for 129 yards and a touchdown in the first game. In the first matchup of last year, that was in Heinz Field at that point in time. And then back in Cincinnati on November 20th, where they got their brains beat in big time. Not November 20th, excuse me. Got the dates mixed up here. November 28th, last week of November, got whooped 41-10 right there. You had in that game too. I mean, Jamar Chase did not have a whole lot of receiving yards in that game, but I mean, the story in each of those games too was the running game too. Joe Mixon, who did a lot of damage control, 28 attempts for 165 yards with 2 touchdowns. And as I mentioned too, I mean, he was a guy who definitely scorched them for the most part. I mean, throughout this season. I mean, basically, and I mean for this season, what they got to do to uh do this right now. It is going to definitely be a lot for the most part, but yeah, I mean, you looked at it right there. I mean, for the Steelers in that game, I mean, basically in those contests, I mean, basically when the Steelers finally got into a losing streak with the Cincinnati Bengals, where they won 3 straight off the Pittsburgh Steelers, which hasn't been done in a long time. I mean, Joe Mixon was definitely a part of that. Joe Mixon, I mean, basically, I mean, if you remember the very first pregame show I'd done for the 2022 season, one of my keys to the game was controlling and stopping the run. The Bengals have outgained the Pittsburgh Steelers 380 to 104 yards prior to this first game of the season. Last 3 games, 240 yards. All large parts. Joe Mixon had 255 yards last season, who had 5.5 yards per attempt off of 46 attempts right there. So that is going to definitely be very vital. I'll pick down the keys of the game on Saturday night. Basically, we'll do a pregame show for that. But here we are. And for right now, the Steelers got a lot to get into this right now. But basically, before we get to the Bengals, let's take a look at the roster news real quickly. Steelers have announced at 1:53 p.m. Eastern that they have released linebacker Hemekler Rashad from the practice squad. Mike Tomlin says Kenny Pickett's ankle is fine. Remember, he slightly injured. He came up a little bit gimpy in the victory versus New Orleans Saints. That was Kenny Pickett's very first win from start to finish in a game. So, I mean, he technically gets his second victory of the season. Tomlin asked about Mitch Trubisky's athleticism. We have no intention of making him Taysom Hill. That's what we're asking. Tomlin was building off criticism of the past pro. Sometimes Kenny gets Kenny in trouble. That's just the nature of being a young guy. And when he was being asked about the run game, being a significant component for the Steelers on both sides, and on both sides of the ball, both in the way they minimized Kamara and Hill and how Harris ran and the offensive line performed. He did mention that Jalen Warren was solid as well. Steelers opened the practice window, too, for a rookie defensive lineman, DeMarvin Leal. He's still on IR and has 21 days to be activated. And then also too with this rivalry, Joe Burrow he definitely had a very interesting take uh, in facing the Steelers this weekend as compared to Week 1. He said, "Just healthier one. I'm not coming off an appendix surgery right there." And I don't know about anyone else though too, but I tweeted this on Twitter and I took very exception to that. I just felt like it was just a little bit of an excuse to be honest with you. I don't know if I want to say that, but I mean, here's the bottom line. The Steel, I mean, for him to even use that right now, he had that a couple weeks before training camp. He was able to make it back in time. But when you look at the Steelers right here in the game, which they escaped in overtime right there, they dominated that game and were up as many by 2 touchdowns in that game, 17-3. Joe Burrow was responsible for all 5 of the Bengals' turnovers, 4 interceptions, and a lost fumble. And of course, one of those scores, remember, was being a pick six. From that point in time, when the Steelers went up 17-3, they got outscored the rest of the way for the most part, 17-6 in that contest. But like I said, they were able to win it in overtime thanks to a botched extra point attempt by their backup long snapper. I just feel like Joe Burrow. I mean, listen, I have no idea what appendix surgery is like. I know it's definitely something very serious right there. It takes multiple weeks to recover. But remember, that was well before in time preseason or slightly into preseason. And I remember a lot of the Bengals stars too. I don't believe a lot of their stars played throughout that season. Still, my beef is if you're still well enough to like still stay in that game, get it to overtime. Joe Burrow still passed for 338 yards uh, with 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, his completion percentage may not have been all that great in that contest. He only completed like about 62% of his passes in that contest. I don't want to hear it, to be honest with you. And for the most part, I do feel like right now, this rematch right here, I think the Steelers got a chance to look even better than before. I mean, the running game was not all that up to snuff, to be honest with you. I mean, you look at that first game. I mean, right there, the Steelers had a for the rushing yards, 22 rushes for 75 yards. Of course, Najee Harris only had 23 yards off of 10 attempts, along with Chase Claypool having 36 yards off 6 attempts. Bill Warren, not so much, 3 attempts for 7 yards. I mean, I know his name continues to get a little bit popular, but I'm still gonna ride Najee as our horse, to be honest with you. And you just cannot take that away from them. I do feel like for right now, this is definitely going to be a very interesting game. I think this is definitely be another classic right here. I could see this being a tightly defensive contest because I think one of the biggest things that stood out in that game too, aside from how the offense was looking lackadaisical for the most part, they went 3 of 12. I mean, of course, that was when they had Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback, and for that time too, and Matt Canada not putting him in the better position to try and succeed. They went 3 of 12 in that game, 25%. They were over 3 in the first half on third down conversion. Excuse me, no, they were 4-15 in the game on third down conversions. 4 of 11 in the second half, over 4 in the first half. So if Najee Harris continues to be a little bit more healthier, rushing with that plate in his foot they had to deal with for most of the season, I could see this being a very successful game, more controlled right here, if you ask me. Also, let's take a look at it too. Right now, with 2 sacks versus Saints, Steelers outside linebacker Alex Smith, he earned his first ever AFC Defensive Player of the Week award right here. And Alex Smith has definitely been well deserving of that award right here. I mean, look at the year that he's been having right now. I mean, for his season right now, he's got 8.5 sacks along with 10 quarterback hits, 36 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss right here. This guy could be well on his way to being selected to a Pro Bowl. I'm not sure about All Pro, maybe. But I mean, he has been doing real good, well solid right now. For back to back year, he's started all of his games right now. And just to see TJ Watt right there, I mean, you might see a new tandem right here as we speak. Uh, Very deserving right there. In that Saints game, like I said, he had a quarterback hit in that contest, along with 2 sacks, and he also had a forced fumble too in that game, in which they won 20-10. Also, too, Andrew Filipoli of 937 The Fan. He was saying that Mark Schlereth, who was on the herd with Colin Cowherd, he said that the Steelers have given Kenny Pickett an office at the team facility. That's what the coach's office is, so they could work with him on film study. Andrew goes on to say, I never heard of a quarterback having his own office right there. It's very interesting right there. When you look at like how everything has been going right now, it's uh it's very cool. I mean, right now, I mean, for how they're like grooming him. I think definitely right now. I mean, the Steelers, what they're saying too about Kenny Pickett, they love his intangibles, moxie, leadership, and work ethic. And and I know there's Verk is still out on him for a guy like Kenny Pickett, who's been a first round pick. I mean, for this season, who they got in this year at 20th overall in the draft right there. Very first quarterback taken. I mean, for the most part, he's got a 2-3 record. He's a game under 500. That's not bad. I do feel like in time though, what he do needs to get corrected too is the touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, right there, 2 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. But Ben Roethlisberger too, who's also talking with Bob Papiani, his recent guest on footballing with Ben Roethlisberger. He was saying like on one of the very first plays of the game too. He had Deontay Johnson wide open too. That he should try to hit him deep right there on the deep ball. I mean, just kind of like help open things up a little bit more because I guess he's still kind of like disagree with the notion of trying to run the ball a little bit more when you've seen how much lack success they had so far up to this point. But anyway, the other stuff that's trending on here too, the great Brett Kiesel on 937 The Fan, he also said to Andrew Filipponi and Chris Muller that Kenny Pickett, he's so driven to win. I see that with Kenny Pickett, just like Big Ben. And we'll continue to see right now. To be honest with you, I mean, I'm here in Chicago. Bears got a guy by the name, I don't know if you heard, Justin Fields right now, who's been doing a lot of stuff with his legs right now, setting records as a quarterback in Bears history with rush records. He's still got a ways to go as far as like developing in the passing game, but he's definitely getting more exciting. The only problem, like I told many people here in Chicago with him, where I have, is that his sack total right now, it's only 10 games, and he's matched his season high in sacks with 36. I mean, last year he started 10 out of 12 games, and you're already at 36 sacks in 10 games right now. And that number's only going to go up right there more and more for the most part. And that's the only thing I get very concerned. I mean, his rushing, I mean, for the most part, for this season right now, he's ran for 749 yards off 104 attempts with 6 touchdowns. But then you look at like his passing game too. He's also completed about 59% of his passes, throwing for 1,489 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, which is not really all that impressive right there. You're talking about barely just under like 3,000 yards passing the way he's being projected to finish out the season. That's my biggest beef right there. So let's go ahead and finish up right into the juicy topic right there too before we get out of here. Fair or foul that Jeff Saturday's hiring to the Indianapolis Colts was a disgrace. You heard many people, Bill Cowher, whose voice seemed to be the loudest one so far to date, uh, seemed to get a lot more heat along with Joe Thomas on NFL Network. But then you also have Rex Ryan here. I'm going to play Rex Ryan and Bill Cowher first, and then they're going to play a clip of Chris Russo, who just literally ripped both Bill Cowher and Joe Thomas, especially Bill Cowher, the shreds.
And quite honestly, it's so disrespectful to every single coach that has actually been in this league. I had a guy named Mike Westhoff who coached for like 40 years in the National Football League, was never given a head coaching opportunity. There's a million great coaches who were never given this opportunity. I look at the coaches on his staff. What message are you sending them? Like, oh, by the way, you're going to get fired. It's as simple as that. Because if you don't think somebody is more qualified to do the job as a head coach on that staff than bringing a guy in pretty much off the street with no experience, I mean, you're sadly mistaken.
Talked about in his first press conference, the fact that he's going to use his second half as an opportunity to build his resume, to see whether or not he can coach in the future. I say to that, what about the assistants on this staff right now? The guys that were there in training camp, the guys that were there early in the morning and late at night, the guys that have gone through the first 6 weeks in that building, guys like Gus Bradley, Scotty Montgomery, John Fox. Don't they deserve the opportunity for an owner to hire a coach who's never been an assistant at the college level or the pro level, and overseeing a lot of candidates that are qualified for that job, as we see in Steve Wilks, an opportunity to build a resume? It's a disgrace to the coaching profession. And regardless how this thing plays out, what happened in Indianapolis is a travesty.
Radio stations and TV stations and networks, they can hire people who have no experience whatsoever. When we got a bunch of people working their rear ends off and he's absolutely making nothing, and they can't get their foot in the door, yet Cowher wins a Super Bowl, does nothing after that, decides he wants to be a broadcaster. No experience whatsoever. He's very average. No experience whatsoever. And so CBS hires him without any experience. So CBS can do that, but Jim Irsay, who owns a billion-dollar franchise, can't. Really now? This is what we're going to do. So it's okay for Joe Thomas, who never went to broadcasting school, all right, who didn't do 3WE Sports Talk in Cleveland. It's okay for him to walk in the NFL Network, sit there and get a job. They put him on TV and out he babbles. He can do it without any experience whatsoever. But God forbid Jeff Saturday gets the job of coaching the Colts. Really? So it's okay to get no experience to get in your seat in broadcasting, but it's not okay to be a head coach, which you guys somehow think you got to be Einstein to do. Yeah, calm down.
And of course, I will say this right now too. I mean, Christopher Russo, I think just went a little bit way too far in that one. But at the same time, though, too, he is right about the hypocrisy of the criticism, basically where it's coming off the meat of it. I mean, Bill Cowher just calling a disgrace and a travesty of the coaching profession. Now, remember, too, Bill Cowher did kind of sympathize with Jeff Saturday, too, who was unsure and was not interested in being involved with the team at first as far as being a coach, the lifestyle, which Bill Cowher clearly related to. Remember, that was one of the things right there, too. I mean, mainly his wife, who was getting severely sick and eventually died about a little over 3 years after he went into broadcasting with CBS as a student analyst. Kay Cowher, she passed away during her long illness with skin cancer. But at the same time, too, I think Bill Cowher right there, I mean, you look at a lot of like guys today too. I mean, and for like Joe Thomas, here's the bottom line. This has been happening since like the early criticism of a guy like Howard Cosell. Howard Cosell right now, who has been long passed away. Believe he passed away in 1996. He always took issue with the fact, like as far as like athletes in his mind, as far as like getting on TV or doing like what he was doing. Remember, he was an analyst or like announcer for the initial Monday Night Football back on ABC Sports. And of course, as well as doing regular like coverage of the game, reporting, and being a journalist in media. And he took issue as far as like how he felt like a lot of athletes were kind of getting almost like an easy pass, so to speak. So I think for Christopher Mad Dog Russo to kind of like go out there and like be in the death on that one, I think he was definitely a little bit way out of bounds on that one. But at the same time, too, I think Bill Cowher, too, just the way he ended it right there, a disgrace and a travesty of the coaching profession. Now, Grant, you just did hear he mentioned a few guys on there, too, like a Gus Bradley. John Fox, which we already seen right there. I mean, he was more famously known with the Panthers and, of course, the Broncos, too, which you had Peyton Manning, but also, like, help, like, turn them around defensively. But I'm not sure if NFL is ready to see John Fox back on the sidelines again, too. I'm not saying he can't do it, though, but then again, with his health issues and stuff, I'm not sure if it would be wise for him to get back into the profession right now. I mean, John Fox, I think he's already showed his cards about what he could do as a coach. I think he is done coaching, so to speak. And he is 67 years old. I'm not sure if he wants to be coaching into his 70s at this point. Let's just say that. But I will say this, too. I do feel like Bill Cowher was – I will disagree with Bill Cowher on this one as far as being a disgrace. I understand where he feels the frustration where it's like you're not like trusting people who are on your staff. Basically, you're not saying that the coach organization, Jim Irsay, he doesn't feel like they're good enough to like take him to the next level. Listen, at the end of the day, the bottom line, it is his team as an executive, as an owner of this team. But I do feel like Jeff Saturday right now, he is definitely a guy people are wanting to root for. Won his very first game this past Sunday in Vegas versus Raiders. And a guy like Jeff Saturday, too, here's the reason why I like this hire. He is one of the Colts' very own, if you think about it. Guy who's played for them as center at that franchise, been the 2 Super Bowls with. They won the Super Bowl together with him and Peyton Manning. And you know the rest of the offensive talent they're around. I think definitely Jeff Saturday identifies as a Colt lifer there, if you ask me. I think that is someone that fits the bill right there as far as character. I mean, as far as like accountability, and has a very great eye for the game. Now, I mean, I know a lot gets talked about. He already has any coaching experience where it's like a collegiate or pro. That's true, but at the same time, too, he has been paying attention to the game. As far as like analyzing the game, debating topics in the game. And if this is going to be slowly that triggers like a new wave of coaches being hired into this game, I have no issue with it. And that's where I'm going to leave it right there. Once again, I'm Charles Prodigy Richey. You guys, ladies and gentlemen, you guys and gals can follow me on social media, on Twitter at MassSteelCGR, and on Instagram at MassSteelNation. So I leave you. Don't be trolling. Be rolling. Here we go, serious. Here we go. Hang on. Thank you for watching the Mass Steel podcast with your host, Charles Prodigy Richey, here on YouTube. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And for all the latest Mass Steel podcast episodes, feel free to download them on Mixcloud, Anchor.fm, and SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts.